stream went down for a minute. I do think that like trade unions are really important. I think if you're working like construction or something, they're very beneficial. But if you're doing if you're not doing like a trade and they're not like protecting your safety, I have a harder time with a union or understanding the purpose of a union. And I think some unions, unfortunately, just they take advantage of employees because they get paid for not doing anything sometimes. Like I worked for a company that had a union, and I was in management, but a lot of my friends that I knew were still, hourly employees because we all came up together. And it seemed like whenever the union had to fight for someone's job that was a hard worker, for some reason they couldn't pull it off. But like people that were bad employees, for some reason it seemed like they always could keep their jobs. I had one employee who was always lying and would not stop lying. And for some reason, like the union could always protect their job forever. Never understood that. They lied so bad that the union told them don't write down anything ever. I think some unions are good. I'm not opposed to I'm not opposed to all unions. Just the one that I worked with on the last gig. I worked in a casino, and after like a couple of years of being open, a union came in. And I started when the union first came in, I was still an hourly employee, so I'd go to their meetings and hear what they had to say. And a lot of what they said was, lies. They would twist the truth and they would omit information. They would just lie. And it was very frustrating. So I tried to convince the rest of the team, like, hey, like these guys are lying to us. Like they can't deliver what they're promising to deliver. All they're going to do is take money out of our checks. But all these rules and things are things that they say they can do for you. These are all like rights that you have, just period, in California. Like California is very pro employee, and it's very hard for companies to fire people without a union. And that was kind of thing here. It's very hard to fire people in California and not pay like unemployment. Like you have to really know what you're doing and document properly to fire someone in California. It's hard. So, but it got voted in anyways. And thankfully I moved up to management before I even paid like any union dues. And then the guys the union reps that got picked by the team from among the teams were just not very bright. Give me, Opa says, give me 10% of your muscles, man. All right, we'll have to figure out an exchange. You just have to open up your I don't know, one of the union reps when they're trying to get voted in told us this like story about um the way their mom was talked to at a job, and they're like, oh, like this guy talked to my mom this way, and if she was in a union, she would have been protected. And I told him, like, listen, like, it's unfortunate your mom was treated that way, but that's 100% illegal. You know, the employer can't talk can't talk to people that way. It's against the law. There's already laws that your mom could have, you know, taken advantage of and sued for. There's no way that they just can't talk to you that way. And I said, and on the flip side, I would not allow an employee or employer to talk to me that way. I would put the fear of God in anyone that tried to address me that way. But I like unions like for safety, for like employees that are working at construction, or if you're working like on the trains, like anything where businesses try to push you past your past the point of being safe. Like I did demolition with a crew that wasn't we didn't have a union, and um, did a lot of dangerous stuff to get jobs done that we wouldn't have done if we were protected by a union. And I was young and I didn't care. Like I would be like 60 feet off the ground, working without a harness, which 60 feet is, I think 60 feet is 20 meters. So 20 meters off the ground without a harness. And it's very unsafe and very dumb. But I didn't care because I was, 20 years old and having fun. But like when I was doing that job, I wasn't wearing my harness because it was like making me go slower, and I wanted to move quickly because they kept telling us we had to move quickly. And I was on a scissor lift, and I was holding on to the bar of the scissor lift and holding on to, I think it was like I forget what I was using, but some sort of like rod, and was knocking down the insulation from the roof. We're clearing the roof, and my boss came in and was like, "Hey, you guys need to move faster. We got, we were supposed to have this job done faster time." And I was like, "Well, that's your problem, man. You bid on this job so poorly that even me dangling off of off of this thing 60 feet in the air isn't fast enough for you, then that's your problem, you know. But had we been in a union, that never would have happened. The other thing that's nice about unions is if you're a tradesman, like my brother-in-law, um, works on installing ceilings, like T-bar and stuff in industrial buildings or office buildings rather. And the nice thing is when he doesn't have work, or like when a job finishes, there, or let's say there's a problem with the owner of the company that he's working for, the union finds him another job. And as long as there's a job somewhere in his area, he'll be able to find work. And that's definitely something that union provides that like the service union doesn't provide. Like at the casino, if the guy gets fired, he's just out of a job. Like the union can't save his job, and he loses his job. He's out. They don't find him another job. They don't call up another hotel or another casino and like, hey, like we got this guy, like he's just out. So on like my brother's in-laws union, that helps him find jobs and takes care of him and provides money when he can't find work for an extended period of time. The service union doesn't do any of that, so it's not as useful as a union. And then some unions in the States have a history of getting into sometimes they break the law. Sometimes there's a criminal element to unions in the United States. And even in those unions, there's a lot of good, like Teamsters Union is known for that. And there's a lot of great Teamsters and a lot of great things that go into the Teamsters Union. But they've done a lot of not great things, like back in the day in like the 60s I think it was the 70s when the guys that were picking the fruit and the vegetables in the Central Valley in California were going on strike to form a union for better wages. The Teamsters were brought in to harass them and even firebombed them a couple of times. One of the strikers got burnt alive by the Teamsters. But in any organization, you're gonna have good and bad people. That's just the nature of the beast, right? And the funniest part, like I said, like working in the casino, like there's cameras everywhere. And you're constantly being watched, constantly being monitored. There's cameras in the hallways, like where just the employees are. There's cameras in the employees' lunchroom. There's cameras everywhere, and you will catch employees doing dumb stuff, even though they know they're being watched. And then they'll lie. They'll lie to you when they get caught, even though they know there's cameras. And I've had like employees, like I had to explain to them, because if you lie, it's a lot more paperwork and a bigger hassle if someone lies. So, and it was supposed to be you get fired for lying, but it didn't go that way a lot. So I got tired of busting employees for lying because it just is a very awkward thing to do, and then they don't lose their jobs, but now you have an employee that hates you because you caught them lying. And I would try to get them to tell me the truth. And I'd be like, listen, like let's say I check the cameras. Are you sure that's the story you want to go with? They're like, yeah, no, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm like, okay, let's say I've already checked the camera. Like I've already looked. Are you sure this is what you want to go with? As the camera says something differently. Are you sure you want to say that you didn't do it? I'm like, no, I didn't do it. I'm like, okay. If you say you didn't do it, it's a much bigger issue than if you just say that you did it, considering there's a camera pointed right at you. And it certainly looks like you did it. And then finally they'd be like, oh yeah, okay, I did it. And I'm like, damn, man. How is it? How did you think you were going to get away with this in the first place? Why did you keep lying? Just be honest. It's just so weird. I think maybe they're just not used to having surveillance around them. Like I grew up in a Christian home, so you're always told God is watching. So if you always have the idea that God's watching you when you sin and stuff, I think maybe it makes it easier to take the camera serious. Because like, oh yeah, I'm used to being watched. But even outside of that, when I lived in China, the police would spy on us. So the police were always watching us. So you had to be perfect, you know. And so by the time I was, in my 20s, I was very used to the idea of surveillance and being watched. I had this one gal that lied so much on a regular basis. It was so like frustrating. And for some reason, she was always able to keep her job, but I would have to like go over things with her over and over and over again before she would finally tell the truth. So I could avoid writing her up for lying. It's such a hassle. And when I was younger, I would lie to get out of being in trouble. But I learned only to lie when you couldn't get caught. You know, I learned early on there are two important things to lying. Is one, only successful lies are ones that no one can ever prove were wrong. And two, you have to stick to your story. You tell yourself the story, and then you tell yourself only that story, and you say that story over and over again till you've convinced yourself, and then you tell the lie, and you don't deviate. That actually helps when it comes to dealing with anything legal and anything having to do with the police or incidents. When you are innocent or if you're lying, it's very important when you talk to the police that you only tell one story and one story ever. And you never add to your story. You never change your story. You don't add flourishes to it. You just tell the same story over and over again, especially if you're innocent. If you're innocent, you tell the events as you remember them, and then you never try to remember more detail. Because what police do when they interrogate you is they try to get you to add to your story so that they can make it look like you were lying. So they'll say, all right, tell me what happened. Let's say you're 100% innocent. You're a perfectly innocent guy. And you tell the police, okay, so I was walking home. It was Sunday afternoon, and this guy jumped out of the bushes with a knife and asked me for my wallet and my money, and I got scared. I pushed him away from me, and he got hit by a car. I didn't mean to push him in the car, but I just pushed him away from me because I was scared. He had a knife, and I pushed him in front of the car. So the cop will say, "Okay, can you tell me, like, what did he say to you?" And you say, "Well, he said, give me the money." And they're like, "Okay." So then they say, "Tell me the story again." So you tell them the story again. Say, "Well, did he say anything else to you?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know." And they're, "Well, you sure he didn't say anything like, give me your wallet or give me your keys or anything else?" And they tell you they're giving you details, and they could be doing this by accident or on purpose. But then you add the details that they've suggested to your story, and then they'll circle back later and they say, "Oh, so first you said he only asked you to give you your money, but then you said he also asked you for your keys. So you changed your story. So are you lying?" And then people get flushed, like, "Oh no, I'm not lying. I'm telling the truth." Well, but your story keeps changing. So how can we trust what you're saying? And that's how cops, can on purpose or on accident make innocent people look guilty. I'm not saying that doing it always on purpose, but sometimes police officers have, on their interrogation, made a perfectly innocent person look guilty because they encourage them to add to their story. And eyewitness testimony is very shaky. One thing that happens though when we tell a story over and over again, we do add details that don't exactly exist. So then we're altering our memory of that story. So then we can be completely wrong with how we're telling the story. And we get things out of order, and the police jump on that and say you're lying. And if they want you to be guilty, they'll use that against you, and then they'll coerce you into giving a false testimony or confession. Dixie says that's why you don't say anything. Yeah. Yeah, that's that hard part of that's where the good cop, bad cop comes into play. Is that people think, like in movies, they always show like the bad cop comes in really hard and scares the person. But it's not. Usually, it's the good cop first, and the good cop. Usually, there's no bad cop. Not lately, anyways. Not for a couple of decades. The idea is that they found it's better to be a good cop and get someone to confess and help make the person believe that you're trying to help them, that you're there to advocate for them. And they do tricks like they ask you if you're sorry, and you can't say. If you say you're sorry, it's an admission of guilt. And even if something like innocent, like the scenario, if the guy jumps at you with a knife, you get scared and you accidentally push him in front of a car, and he dies. So if you say, the cop will ask like, "Well, are you sorry that you pushed them?" And if you say you're sorry, they'll use it and say like, "Oh, this was an admission of guilt." So he's guilty that he pushed him, which means that it was, wrong. So then they try and get you with that, which sucks. Then you can't like be honest if something goes wrong, or you can't like try and make things better with anyone that was involved because they'll just use it against you. That's why like there's there's the case of the guy Kyle Rittenhouse that shot the people attacking him during a demonstration, and he's on the media and he's never said like he's sorry about it, and people will be like, "Oh, he's like a cold killer, he's a bad guy, he's never said he's sorry or feels bad about it, like he's such a piece of crap." But legally, it's not a good move for him to ever apologize, because if he ever said he was sorry, if he ever said he had remorse, then the victims' families or the people that were attacking him that he shot could then go after him financially in a civil suit and sue him and say, "Well, he said he was sorry. If he was sorry, he must have done something wrong. Therefore, he must pay us millions of dollars." And so this kid that was in this thing can never apologize, and it's really not great. But Dixie Vixie is absolutely right. Don't say anything unless you have a very expensive lawyer. If you have a court appointed attorney, forget about it. Don't trust that guy. A court appointed attorney may burn your case in order to get leverage for another case. There are two things that determine your success in the U.S. when it comes to being found guilty or innocent. And unfortunately, it's how good looking you are and how much money you have. The better looking you are, the more likely you're you're gonna get away with the crime. The amount of money you have is more important than how good looking you are. But if you go before a jury and you're good looking, you have a better chance. Which one is Lawyer Mike? Because there's a couple of lawyers that do shorts that are pretty funny. I know which one you're talking about in the blue suit. Yeah, he's got some good stuff. My favorite is the guys that do I forget which, I don't know his name, but he goes over movies and like TV shows and discusses the validity of the cases and why things are wrong. If you ever want to hear a super crazy court document, and it's exchange between a prisoner and a judge. If you look up Rick and Morty in just YouTube, like court case or um, jury or judge, you can find it. It's very very crude, very coarse. It's on the same lines of Rick and Morty language, but they read the court case as Rick and Morty. They read it in the voice. Morty does the voice of the judge, and Rick does the voice of the prisoner, and it's pretty crazy. Like, how is this real? There's a real one that's like super scary. There was this, I can't remember where, but there's this lady that got appointed to be a judge and had no real experience in the courtroom. They were a lawyer, but they'd never been a trial lawyer, and they'd spent like no time in the courtroom. And they took over the prosecutor's role at one point and were acting as a prosecutor in the case and the judge, and just completely bananas, like just out of their mind. Like, it's something they're like, how does this ever work? How did this person ever think this was a good idea, that they would dismiss the prosecutor and be like, I'm going to be the prosecutor and the judge, but don't worry, I will be fair and balanced to the defendant. I won't at all, let being a prosecutor sway me in judging this case. But we've had a history of some crazy judges in the U.S. Thank you, Koba. Koba says, I watch only you on YouTube, no one else. It's very nice of you, Koba. I got like one more set and I gotta bounce. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know how it is for you guys in France and Europe, but the California, or not just California, sorry, the United States justice system has a lot of problems. It's not as good as people would like it to be. Yeah, we got some problems. Like we convict a lot of innocent people because can't um, they can't afford a legal defense. One of the things that happens in the U.S. is federal prosecutors have a 90% success rate when they bring, if they actually go into court, there's a 90% chance they're going to find you guilty. And partly they're really good at picking their cases and which ones to pursue, and they don't pursue ones that are shaky. But what that means is if, like, let's say I don't commit a crime, let's say I'm innocent. But my lawyer, I have a lawyer, and let's say I don't have a lot of money. Let's say I have a court-appointed lawyer. So I'm not paying for this person. This person is being paid by the state and not very well, and they probably don't have a lot of experience. So they'll come to me and they'll say, "Listen, Tim, you're being accused of murder," and they're going to go ahead and they're going to bring murder charges against you, and when they're going to find you guilty. And if they find you guilty, you're in a state that has the death penalty, or you're in a state that has life imprisonment. And the DA, they're saying that they're going to put you, they're going to do life without parole. Or you can plead guilty and you're going to do 20 years, but you'll have a chance for parole in 15 years or 10 years for good behavior. So you can be out in 15 years, or you can be out never, or you can go to electric chair, or you can face death in prison. And just so you know, the feds have a 90% chance of finding you guilty. You only have a 10% chance of not being guilty. So you can plead guilty and take the charges, or they're going to pursue all the charges and you're going to go away for life. And they're probably going to win. So then a lot of innocent people will then plead guilty because they can't afford, they don't want to go, they're scared. They don't want to face a death penalty. They don't want to go away for life. So they'll just say, okay, I did it. I'll go do my 20 years. I'll go do my 10 years, my 15 years. And they'll do it for lesser charges too. It's not always about murder. It can be about drugs. And like, well, they're going to wrap you up in this case and you're going to do 20 years hard time for this crime. Or you can plead guilty and I can get you 5 years and probation, or 10 years and probation. But the problem is now you've pled guilty to a crime you didn't commit, but when you get out, you're not going to be able to get as good of a job. You're going to spend all your money on legal fees. Your life is in shambles. Who knows what prison's done to you? 5 years in prison, 10 years in prison, you can come out a completely different person because you had to do things to survive. So it's not a very fair system. And that's like, I'll say like one more thing that sucks too is things like DNA evidence sucks because they'll tell you that, hey, we've got your DNA. We can prove that you committed this crime. And the cops may actually believe that they have your DNA. And so they may push harder for confession and come down hard on you because they actually believe, because the DNA lab told them that you're the criminal, they may push for you to confess and push really hard and go to trial with that DNA evidence if you tried to argue. But what we found out is that, one, DNA labs will sometimes fudge results. They did this experiment where they sent DNA samples to a lab and said, hey, we need to identify this person. And the lab would say, hey, we can't, there's not enough DNA here. The sample's no good. We can't say whose DNA this is with any surety. And I was like, okay. Then they'll have a police department contact the lab and submit the same sample and say, hey, we've got this guy that's a rapist, or we got this guy that's a killer, and we have his DNA, but we just need to prove that this DNA is him. It's the last little bit of evidence. We need to put him away. And like, yeah, he killed like 3 kids. We know it's him, but we need the DNA evidence. So they'll submit it, and that same DNA lab will come out and say, oh, this is a perfect sample, and yes, this is this guy. You got the right guy. And it's that human error where they want to help the police put away a criminal, so then they lie and they change the paperwork, and it's very unfortunate. So you can't trust DNA evidence at all on that, in that regard. So it's very, very unfortunate, because then they can say, well, we got your DNA, and your lawyer is definitely going to tell you at that point you should plead guilty. Dixie Vic says you know a lot. Oh, I read a lot and I listen to a lot. And I'm getting older. the longer you have to read and absorb information, the more you'll know. That's a secret. It's also the secret of big muscles, Copa, is I've been working on these for years. It's not like overnight. So a lot of time, a lot of energy. That's the secret. Just keep pouring time into it. Time can make muscles bigger, increase your knowledge, as long as you're applying yourself. But the legal world has always been really fascinating to me, and the knowing the ins and out and how to stay out of prison. It's been something I've fixated on a lot. So thank you very much for coming by. I hope you guys have a good week, and hope you guys, stay out of prison. avoid any guilty charges. Get yourselves good lawyers. All right. God bless you guys. Thank you so much. See you, Copa. Bye, Dixie Vixie. Thank you for hanging out. Hopefully, if you guys are streaming later on, hopefully I'll be able to jump on and say hi. Hear your guys' voices. Have fun.